Hey guys, welcome to Digit.in, and today let's talk about Gears Tactics. The game is actually set to release tomorrow, that is April 28th, on PC. And before you actually go ahead and buy it, this review is going to help you decide whether this is a game you want to add to your collection or not. If you're a Gears fan, this is sort of, I wouldn't call it a no-brainer, but this is a good thing to have because Gears Tactics actually covers a timeline before the original Gears of War game, so it's a prequel. So we're gonna get into the storyline in a bit, but this is also a top-down shooter. It's not a traditional third-person shooter Gears of War game that you are used to. So there is that. Now, the game's premise essentially is that you play as Kate Diaz, who's a character in the game, and the mission is to assassinate a locust scientist and also sort of pick up some secret documents. And you're aided by your right hand man, Sid Redburn. And you know, it's interesting because in Gears of War you always have this companion in all games. So in this one as well, nothing has changed. There are a lot of new characters in the game. None of them really have their stories very well fleshed out, unfortunately. But there's a lot of characters, there's a lot of story, there's a lot of history. The premise of the game is fairly simple: assassinate a scientist, but it's the gameplay that's really engaging. Now, the challenge with turning a third-person shooter franchise into a top-down shooter is how do you sort of appease the fans of one or the other. This is where XCOM comes in. So there are a lot of elements from XCOM. There's actually even a lot of familiarity with Halo Wars in this game. You have the concept of that you're a squad. Each member of the squad gets a certain number of turns, and you have to sort of execute your entire game plan within those combined moves. At most, you'll have a squad of 4, which means 12 moves between the 4 of you, whereas the Locust will number at any given point of time, maybe even 10, 15. You also battle a Brumak, which is pretty awesome. And all in all, like, this game puts strategizing first. What's really interesting is that Gears of War sort of brought this whole take cover, shoot cover, strategize sort of gameplay to, you know, a genre which is just about mindless shooting. That same characteristic carries over to Gears Tactics as well. There is a lot of cover based elements in this game. You still have to figure out how to take cover, and you have to sort of balance your action points between taking cover or taking out the enemy. So it does take a lot of strategizing, which sort of, if you're a big Gears fan, like, you may not really enjoy the slower pace of the game, but at the same time it's actually still a lot of fun because there are multiple ways of going about completing your mission. In terms of characters and in terms of abilities, you have an entire ability tree open up to you, and as you go through missions you gain ability points and you can unlock these abilities. Honestly, that's like pretty standard across any game of this genre, that you will have abilities you'll need to upgrade to. But what's really cool is that you also have various classes, and typically you'll have a heavy, you'll have a sniper, you'll have a scout, etc. So you'll have to balance out your squad before every mission. So it sort of also has that Mass Effect like element to it. Now, when it comes to the visuals, this game is an absolute treat. Here's why. When you go into top down, there is this possibility of downgrading on the visual experience because there's not a lot of three-dimensional textures being drawn. However, with Gears Tactics, that's not the case. You have exact game, like, when you, for example, take out a locust with a headshot, the animation that plays is exactly the one that would play as if you were playing a real Gears of War game, you know, the original. So you have a lot of cinematic elements that have been brought in from the original games. The character designs are spot on. It does not feel like a watered down version in terms of character sketch, or even the worlds for that matter, like that rustic, destroyed world that you feel. There's a lot of fire everywhere, there's chaos, and it sort of has a lot of similarity to the world we experience in the first trilogy of Gears of War. which is really nice. So visually the game does not feel very different. You still have the same weapons. They've actually maintained a lot of consistency between the ammunition available in the first Gears of War game and Gears Tactics. So there's, because it's sort of, they've established it as a prequel, right? So you have to have some level of consistency and continuity. So that way it's actually pretty impressive. Visually as well, we ran this game on a PC with running an 8700K, so that's a Intel Core i7 8700K, 32 gigs of RAM, NVIDIA 2070 Super, of course running, if the game running off of an NVMe drive, and we were able to clock about 140 FPS on a 1080p monitor, and when playing on 1440p we managed to get about 70 FPS. Graphic settings were at their very highest, that's ultra, and believe me when I say this, the game looks absolutely brilliant. Now to answer the all important question, should you buy this game? Very honestly, this game sets up the original trilogy very well, and if you, not just the first trilogy by the way, even the games that come on later, so if you're really invested in the Gears universe, getting this just to sort of build on the lore may be worth it to you. The game does cost 4,000 rupees on the Windows Store and on Steam, but if you have Game Pass for PC, then you get this for free. This game is not yet available on the Xbox, surprisingly, but it is there for the PC. Now, so that's one reason to get it. Reason number two to get it is if you're a fan of the genre. So this sort of brings a lot of strategizing and a lot of interesting combat elements to a top-down shooter. So that way, yes, again, worth it. But if you're not really a big, if you're not invested in the Gears franchise, or even if you are but you don't think you don't want to spend 4,000 bucks, you can wait. This game does not add any critical points to not just the previous games that have already been out, but I don't think it's gonna even add anything critical to the games that come out later. So you could wait till the price drops and get it. But yes, is it fun to play? Absolutely. Is it visually amazing? Absolutely. Are there annoyances in this game? Absolutely. For example, there are certain keyboard controls that are just not intuitive. For example, yes, WASD for move works beautifully well, but if you want to turn the camera around, the Q key turns it to the right and the E key turns it to the left. Now that's sort of counterintuitive. That's one. Secondly, there are a lot of times when the worlds won't render properly and the enemy won't render properly. In fact, the enemy won't render at all, but they are there. So when you're trying to figure out where the locust swarm is hiding, and then you're looking around the map, you don't see them. So you're like, oh no, now what do I do? And you think, well, maybe they're not there at all, but they are. So when it's the enemy's turn, they just randomly pop up. Now this doesn't happen all the time. It happened only a handful of times when I was playing the game. Hopefully it's a bug that will be fixed once the game is launched with a subsequent day 1 patch perhaps. But till that happens, there are a few quirks to the game. And on that note, thank you for watching this video. Hope you've enjoyed it. Hope it's helped you make a decision on whether to buy Gears Tactics or not. Definitely worth buying if you're a Gears fan. Definitely worth buying if you're into the genre. Not worth it if you're just lukewarm about the story, and if you're not into the lore of the entire Gears universe. You could wait till it goes on discount. Thank you guys for watching this video, and hopefully you'll have a great day.